I looked across my office at a woman I will call Sarah. Sarah was 62 years old, elegant, articulate, and completely broken. She was gripping a tissue in her hand so tightly her knuckles were white. She looked at me with eyes that were red from days of weeping and whispered something I have heard hundreds of times in my clinical practice. She said, "But doctor, when I met him, it was like a lightning bolt. It felt like I had known him for 1,000 years. It wasn't just attraction, it was recognition. The universe put us together. He is my soulmate. So why is he destroying me?" Sarah had fallen into what Carl Jung, the great Swiss psychiatrist, might call the most dangerous psychological trap a human being can encounter. She thought she had found a spiritual union, but what she had actually encountered was a projection of her own unconscious mind. She had fallen in love with a mirror, and when that mirror shattered, as it always must, it cut her to pieces. This topic, the search for the soulmate, is not what you think it is. In our culture, especially for women in the second half of life, who may be widowed, divorced, or single after years of focusing on careers or children, the idea of the soulmate is sold as the ultimate prize. It is presented as the final chapter of the fairy tale. But Carl Jung offered a shocking, much darker, and infinitely more profound truth about this experience. He warned that what feels like a soulmate connection is often a psychological event called projection, specifically the projection of the animus, the inner masculine side of a woman's soul. When you project this onto a real, flawed human man, you are not seeing him, you are seeing a god. And living with a god who turns out to be a mere mortal, and often a troubled one at that, can cost a woman her autonomy, her financial security, her relationships with her adult children, and her sanity. In over 20 years of clinical practice specializing in the psychology of women, particularly women, navigating the complex emotional landscapes of their 50s, 60s, and beyond, I have seen this pattern decimate the most intelligent, capable women. I've seen women who ran corporations, women who raised families, women who were the pillars of their communities lose everything because they mistook a psychological projection for a divine destiny. They believed the intensity of the connection was proof of its safety. But in psychology, intensity is rarely a sign of safety. It is usually a sign of unhealed history repeating itself. If you are listening to this and you feel that pull towards someone, or if you are looking for that magical other half to complete your life, or perhaps if you are watching a mother or a sister lose herself in a new intense relationship, I need you to listen very closely. I'm going to walk you through the hidden dangers of the soulmate myth through a Jungian lens. I'm going to explain why this happens, how to spot the difference between a real connection and a dangerous projection, and how to find true love without losing your soul in the process. Before we descend into the depths of the human psyche, I want to ask you to take a small action that helps me continue this work. Please click the like button and subscribe to this channel. It is a simple gesture, but it helps this message reach the women who need it most. Women who might be standing on the precipice of a decision that could change their lives forever. And I urge you to stay with me until the very end of this video. In the final moments, I will give you a set of specific, self-diagnostic questions, a litmus test for your relationship. These questions are designed to cut through the fog of emotion and reveal whether you are in a healthy partnership or a Jungian projection trap. These questions have saved my clients years of heartache, and they can do the same for you. Let us begin with the first and perhaps the most common danger, which I call the mirror of the unlived life. According to Jung, every woman possesses a shadow, a part of the psyche where we store the parts of ourselves that we were told were unacceptable, or simply the parts we never had time to develop. Maybe you were the good girl who followed the rules, raised the kids, and kept the house clean. You repressed your wildness, your creativity, your selfishness, or your aggression. You put those traits in the basement of your mind and locked the door. When you reach your 50s or 60s, the pressure in that basement builds. You feel a restlessness. And then you meet a man. He is perhaps a bit chaotic. He is an artist, or a wanderer, or a free spirit who doesn't play by society's rules. He is everything you never allowed yourself to be, and instantly you fall madly in love. You think, he completes me. But Jung would say you are not in love with him, you are in love with your own unlived life, which you have projected onto him like a movie onto a screen.
Let me tell you about Elena.
Elena was 64, a retired school principal. She was organized, respected, and financially stable. She had lived a life of service and discipline. 3 years after her husband passed, she met Julian. Julian was 68, a partially employed musician who lived in a rented room and talked about philosophy and living in the moment. He was charming, poetic, and utterly irresponsible. Elena felt an electric charge she hadn't felt in 40 years. She told me, "He makes me feel alive. He sees the world in color, and I've been living in black and white." She felt that he was her soulmate because he represented the freedom she had denied herself for decades. The danger here is subtle but deadly. Because Elena fell in love with her own freedom projected onto Julian, she couldn't see that Julian wasn't free. He was immature. He wasn't philosophical. He was avoidant. He had no savings, no relationship with his own children, and a history of depending on women. Within 6 months, Elena wasn't just dating Julian. She was sponsoring him. She paid off his car note because artists shouldn't be burdened by debt. She renovated her basement so he could have a studio. She alienated her friends who warned her, accusing them of being closed-minded and bourgeois. She was unconsciously trying to buy her own freedom by funding his. The crash came when Julian, feeling stifled by her expectations, disappeared for a week with a woman 20 years younger, using Elena's credit card to fund the trip. Elena was left devastated, not just by the betrayal, but by the collapse of the fantasy. She had to face the hard work of claiming her own freedom, her own creativity, rather than trying to marry it. The lesson here is that you cannot marry your shadow. You must integrate it. If you crave freedom, take a painting class, travel alone, or break a rule yourself. Do not fall in love with a man simply because he acts out the parts of you that you are afraid to live. Concrete rule: never fall in love with the potential in a man that you are actually longing to express in yourself. This leads us to the second, deeper danger, which Jung famously called the animus possession, or what I refer to in relationships as the search for the magician. In Jungian psychology, the animus is the unconscious masculine aspect of a woman's psyche. It represents logic, spirit, opinion, and meaning. As women age, the animus becomes stronger. This is why older women often become more assertive, more interested in spiritual or intellectual pursuits, and less concerned with pleasing others. It is a natural, beautiful evolution. However, if a woman does not understand this internal shift, she will project this search for meaning onto a man. She stops looking for a partner and starts looking for a guide, a guru, or a magician. She wants a man who has the answers, a man who seems to possess a superior spiritual or intellectual depth. She wants him to lead her to the promised land of her own soul. This dynamic is incredibly dangerous because it attracts narcissists and predators who love to play the role of the guru. Consider the case of Margaret. Margaret was 58, a successful lawyer who felt a sudden, hollowing emptiness in her life after her children left home. She felt the corporate world was shallow. She wanted depth. She met a man named David at a meditation retreat. David was charismatic, spoke softly, and claimed to have spent years in ashrams in India. He looked deep into Margaret's eyes and told her, "I can see your true essence, and it is being suffocated by your lifestyle." Margaret didn't just fall in love, she fell into worship. She believed David was her twin flame, a concept that is often a spiritualized version of codependency. She believed he held the keys to her enlightenment because she had projected her animus, her own capacity for wisdom, onto him. She surrendered her critical thinking. When David suggested that her investments were anchors to the material world and that they should invest in a conscious community land project he was leading, she agreed. She bypassed her own legal expertise, her own decades of risk assessment, because she didn't want to question the magician. By the time she came to see me, the money was gone. The land project didn't exist. David had moved on to a new student. But the tragedy wasn't just the money. It was that Margaret had given away her own power. She had believed her wisdom lived in him, not in her. She had to learn the painful truth that at this stage of life, you must be your own guru. You must be the priestess of your own temple. Concrete rule: if a man claims to understand your soul better than you do, or requires you to submit your judgment to his wisdom, he is not a soulmate, he is a hazard. Now, we must discuss the third danger, which is one of the most seductive traps for women who are emotionally attuned and spiritually open. I call this the trap of misinterpreted synchronicity. Carl Jung coined the term synchronicity to describe meaningful coincidences, events that have no causal connection but seem meaningfully related. For example, you think of a rare bird, and then a minute later, that bird flies into your window. Jung believed these were important moments where the internal world and the external world mirrored each other. However, in the realm of romance, specifically for women seeking a soulmate later in life, synchronicity can be a deadly trap. We are hardwired to look for patterns. When we want love desperately, we start to manufacture patterns. We overinterpret coincidences as signs from the universe that we must be with this person, even when reality is screaming run. I remember a client named Diane, age 65. She had been widowed for 5 years and was very lonely. She met a man online named Robert. On their first coffee date, they discovered they both had golden retrievers named Max. They both had mothers named Eleanor. They had both visited the same obscure village in Italy in 1998. Diane told me, "Doctor, the odds of this are impossible. It's a sign. God is telling me this is the one." This belief that the coincidence was a divine mandate acted as a blinder. Because the universe sent him, Diane felt she had no right to judge him. When Robert showed up late, smelling of alcohol, she rationalized it. He's just stressed. The universe wouldn't have sent me an alcoholic. When he asked to borrow money because of a banking error, she gave it to him. We are connected by fate. His problems are my problems. She ignored the red flags because she was fixated on the signs. She was reading the cosmic tea leaves, but ignoring the concrete reality in front of her face. Jung would say that synchronicity is meant to wake us up, not put us to sleep. It is an invitation to pay attention, not a contract to endure abuse. Diane's fated romance ended when Robert crashed her car while driving drunk. It turned out the coincidences were just that, coincidences. Or in some cases, things he had gleaned from her social media profile before the date, to manufacture a sense of familiarity. The shocking truth here is that the universe does not arrange marriages. Coincidences are beautiful, but character is what sustains a relationship. You can share a birthday, a favorite book, and a mother's name with a sociopath. The feeling of fate is often just the feeling of high anxiety mixed with high hope. Concrete rule: a coincidence is a curiosity, not a command. Never let a sign from the universe override the red flags in his behavior. The fourth danger is perhaps the most heartbreaking because it stems from a woman's vast capacity for empathy. I call this the shadow contract, or the myth of the wounded healer. Jung spoke extensively about the wounded healer, the idea that our own pain allows us to help others. But in romantic relationships, this often morphs into a trauma bond. Many women in their 50s and 60s carry significant scars: divorce, illness, loss, family estrangement. When they meet a man who is also broken or complicated, they feel a deep resonance. They think, he understands my pain because he has his own. We are two broken pieces that fit together to make a whole. This sounds romantic, like a country song, but clinically, it is a disaster. Jung warned that when two unconscious shadows meet, they do not heal each other, they contaminate each other. I worked with a woman named Brenda, 55. She had a history of feeling unseen by her parents. She met a man who was deeply depressed, struggling with the legacy of a bitter divorce. Brenda felt his pain viscerally. She felt that her love could heal him. She thought her soulmate mission was to rescue him from his darkness. She poured her energy into him. She became his therapist, his cheerleader, his nurse. She listened to his hours of venting about his ex-wife. She confused pity with love. She confused being needed with being cherished. But here is the Jungian truth. You cannot heal another person's shadow. You can only work on your own by focusing entirely on healing him. Brenda was avoiding her own deep loneliness and lack of self-worth. She was using his tragedy to give her life purpose. The relationship became a sinking ship. He did not get better, he just dragged her down into his depression. She stopped seeing her friends, she gained weight, she developed insomnia, she was drowning in his darkness, believing it was an act of holy love. True love is not a hospital. A soulmate is not a patient. In a healthy relationship, two whole people come together to share their wholeness, not to patch up each other's holes. If you feel that your job in the relationship is to fix him, save him, or interpret him to the world, you are not in a partnership, you are in a project. And projects do not love you back. Concrete rule: you cannot love a man into wholeness. If his demons are in the driver's seat, you must get out of the car. Let us move to the fifth danger, which is specific to the narrative of the last chance. I call this the fantasy of completion. Jung's ultimate goal for human development was something he called individuation. This is the process of becoming a whole undivided self. It means you have integrated your shadow, your animus, your strengths, and your weaknesses. You are complete in yourself. The popular soulmate myth teaches the opposite. It teaches, as the line in the movie Jerry Maguire says, "You complete me." It suggests you are a half soul wandering the earth, useless and hollow until you plug into your other half. For women over 50, this myth is exacerbated by the fear of aging and dying alone. The cultural narrative whispers, if you don't find him now, you will be alone forever. This creates a background hum of desperation that predators can hear from a mile away. I saw this with Clara, a 70-year-old widow. Clara had a wonderful life, grandchildren, a garden, a book club, but she felt incomplete. She felt that without a man, she wasn't a valid woman. She met a man at a senior center who was aggressive and controlling. He wanted to know where she was every minute. He criticized her clothes. He disliked her children. In her 20s, Clara would have told him to get lost. But at 70, under the spell of the completion myth, she stayed. She told me, "Doctor, I don't want to eat dinner alone anymore. He's my last chance at a soulmate." She was willing to sacrifice her dignity to avoid solitude. Jung would argue that the capacity to be alone, to be solitary but not lonely, is the mark of a mature soul. By trying to use a man to plug the hole of solitude, Clara was actually abandoning herself. She was acting out a regressive fantasy that a daddy would come and make the world safe. The shocking truth is that a soulmate cannot complete you. If you go into a relationship feeling half empty, you will attract a vampire who wants to drink the little you have left. You must come to the table full. Concrete rule. A partner is a witness to your life, not the missing piece of it. You must be the architect of your own happiness before you invite someone in. Now that we have uncovered these 5 dangers, the mirror, the magician, the trap of synchronicity, the shadow contract, and the fantasy of completion, we must zoom out and look at the broader existential risks. Why does this matter so much? Why am I, a clinical psychologist, speaking to you with such urgency? Because the cost of this error in late life is not just a broken heart. In your 20s, a bad relationship is a learning experience. You have time to recover financially. You have time to rebuild your career. You have time to heal. But in your 50s, 60s, and 70s, the stakes are existential. I have seen women lose their entire life savings, money meant for their care in old age, because they gave it to a soulmate who was actually a con artist or a gambler. I have seen women lose their health, stress-induced heart conditions, autoimmune flare-ups, severe insomnia, because the body cannot handle the cortisol spikes of a chaotic relationship at 60 the way it could at 30. And perhaps most tragically, I have seen the rupture of families. I have seen adult children stop talking to their mothers because they could not watch her be abused or exploited any longer. They pull away to protect themselves and their own children. Imagine this scenario. You are 75. You are ill. You need care. But you are alone, not because you didn't find a man, but because the man you found drove everyone else away and then left you when the money ran out. This is the emotional legacy you risk when you chase the Jungian projection instead of reality. You are the matriarch. You are the elder. Your life is a library of wisdom. You have a responsibility to yourself and your lineage to protect the asset that is you. You are not a teenager who can afford to be reckless with your soul. You are a queen who must guard her kingdom. So, is the solution to close your heart? To lock the doors and buy a cat and give up on love? Absolutely not. Carl Jung was not a pessimist. He believed in the profound power of relationship. But he believed in conscious relationship. The healthy alternative to the soulmate fantasy is what I call conscious partnership. In a conscious partnership, you are not looking for a savior. You are looking for a fellow traveler. You are not looking for someone to carry your backpack. You are looking for someone who is strong enough to carry his own backpack while walking next to you. This kind of love feels different. It is not a lightning bolt of anxiety and obsession. It is a slow burn. It is quiet. It feels like safety, not danger. It respects boundaries. A healthy partner for a woman in her second half of life loves her independence. He does not. I want to merge with her. He wants to meet her. He has his own life, his own friends, his own interests, and he encourages you to have yours. He is not threatened by your children or your past. He honors the life you lived before him. I have seen this too. I have seen women find beautiful, tender love in their 70s. But in every case, it happened because the woman was already happy. She was already whole. She didn't need a man to survive. She wanted a man to share her joy. The difference between need and want is the difference between slavery and liberty. Now, I want to speak directly to your identity. Who are you really? You are a woman who has survived 100% of her bad days. You have navigated decades of history. You have likely cared for others, buried loved ones, built careers, and managed homes. You have earned your wisdom. Do not let a biological flush of hormones or a psychological trick of the unconscious strip you of your dignity in the final acts of your play. You want to be remembered as a woman who loved wisely, not a woman who lost herself foolishly. You want your emotional legacy to be one of strength and discernment. The shocking truth of Jung is that the soulmate you have been looking for is and always has been the other parts of yourself. The masculine strength, the spirit, the meaning, the joy, it is all inside you. When you claim that, when you integrate that, you become a beacon. And ironically, that is when you become most attractive to a healthy, grounded man. A healthy man doesn't want to be your God. He wants to be your man. I promised you at the beginning of this video that I would give you a set of self-diagnostic questions, a litmus test to see if you are safe. I want you to close your eyes for a moment, take a deep breath, and ask yourself these questions honestly. Listen to what your body tells you. Question 1. Do I feel calm with him, or do I feel anxious? True connection breeds calm, projection breeds anxiety, and obsession. Question 2. Am I hiding parts of this relationship from my friends or children? Secrecy is the hallmark of the shadow. If you are ashamed to tell the truth about him, you are in danger. Question 3. Is the relationship balanced financially and emotionally, or am I giving while he is taking? Look at the ledger. The math doesn't lie. Question 4. Does he encourage my independence, or does he make me feel guilty for doing things without him? Question 5. If I took away the magical feelings and the coincidences and just looked at his actions over the last 3 months, would I hire him to be an employee in my business? If you wouldn't trust him with a cash register, do not trust him with your heart. Question 6. Do I feel like I am saving him? If the answer is yes, you are not a partner, you are a crutch. Question 7. Am I afraid that if I set a boundary, he will leave? In a healthy relationship, boundaries create respect. In a toxic one, they create war. Open your eyes. If you answered these questions and felt a knot in your stomach, pay attention to that knot. That is your intuition. That is the wise woman inside you, the true soulmate trying to protect you. Finding love is a beautiful thing at any age, but let it be a love that honors who you have become, not a fantasy that tries to undo who you are. Jung taught us that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Do not sacrifice that privilege for a mirage. You are whole, you are valuable, and you are worth protecting. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this message resonated with you, or if you know a woman who needs to hear this before she makes a mistake she cannot undo, please share this video. Like and subscribe to join a community of women who are choosing wisdom over illusion. Stay safe, stay wise, and remember, the most important relationship you will ever have is the one with yourself.